in, but all right. Welcome everybody to Syosset Public Library's Summer Scares event with Rachel Harrison, author of The Return and the upcoming Cackle, which we're super excited about. My name is Jessica. I am one of the librarians at Syosset Public Library, and my coworker is...
I'm Stacy Mencher. I'm a reader services librarian.
And we are here to have an awesome night, and we're going to talk to Rachel Harrison, the author aforementioned, about her awesome scary book, The Return. Mm-hmm. So let me just do a few housekeeping rules before we get going. This is a fun, friendly event. Any semblance of hate speech, racism, abusive language will have you removed from the meeting by either Stacy or myself, which is definitely not why we're here. We're here to talk about scary books. We're going to let Rachel introduce herself and her book in a little bit. This is in webinar mode, so there are two ways that you can engage. You can use the chat function, or you can use the Q&A function, and Stacy and myself will address the question to Rachel. Please do not be shy. We are super excited to have you all here, and we encourage audience participation.
Yes.
Since I am on the clock and Stacy is on the clock, our drinks are actually waiting off to the side, but Rachel is our guest, and I see she has her cocktail ready.
I saw, I was like, that's a gorgeous glass. I do not have a cocktail on the side. I drink seltzer, which you can't see. Oh, there you go. My spooky,
I'm drinking my red blend of Seven Moons wine, which has gotten me
appropriate name
16 months. Ooh, it's so good. And Rachel, what are you partaking? What is your beverage of choice?
So it's gin and ginger with very light gin, because I have a very low tolerance and I want to be coherent throughout this. So just a dash of gin.
Just to add some flavor.
Yes. All right. So without any further ado, I am going to make Rachel the spotlight. Hi, Rachel. And please introduce yourself and tell us about your book.
So my name's Rachel Harrison, and my book, The Return, it came out last March. And it's also available in paperback. And it is about a group of 4 friends, they're college friends, and they've all sort of scattered across the country and haven't seen each other in a while. And one of the friends goes missing, and she just kind of vanishes and no one knows where she went. And then she mysteriously reappears, and the friends all reunite at a themed hotel in the Catskills. And it becomes very apparent very quickly that the friend who disappeared is not quite the same. And yeah, the mystery unspools from there.
This book was so good. Where did the idea for it come from? And again, like I said, anybody please bring your own questions to the chat.
The Q&A is on the bottom, chat's on the bottom as well. If you're too shy, that's okay. Q&A lets you be anonymous.
That was my cat.
No, I'm very curious about where you got the idea, because I'm like, this could be my friend group from college.
So I think I can't really pinpoint where when I had the light bulb moment. But the inspiration behind the hotel is the Madonna Inn in California. I saw pictures online and was just really like, oh my gosh, that place is amazing. I'm dying to go. You're freaking out.
I had that in mind too.
Yeah. The Red Honey Inn, which is the hotel in the book, is a little bit more outlandish. But there was the Madonna Inn, and I was kind of like, that would be a great setting for a Shining-esque horror novel. And then with the friend group, it was really just my personal experience in terms of the friends in the book aren't my friends, but a lot of that dynamic and that anxiety about being in a group setting, and are they closer than we are, and do they all like each other more than they like me? And just, I think it was hard when you graduate. Sometimes like your lives take radically different turns. So my life was like, I was in a completely different place than some of my other best friends. And like, I remember like I wasn't making as much money. So they would want to like go on trips. And I like felt a lot of anxiety about that, and just like really struggling with being like, I'm not where I thought I would be. And like, I don't know how to cope with that. And does everybody's lives look better than mine? So a lot of those like anxieties, and then the drifting apart. And sometimes I describe this book as a friendship breakup book, because I've had like 2 very close friendships fall apart, and there's no real like blueprint on how to mourn those relationships. And it's really tough. And I don't think people talk about it enough. And there's a lot of like shame and embarrassment about like what happens when you fall out with someone you're so close to. So all of those things sort of were brewing, and that's how The Return was born.
I love it. We have one of our attendees, Amber, says the friend group was very relatable. So yes. But I want to piggyback on what you said, because I think no one does talk about like when you kind of have a friendship breakup, and whether it's, you know, like a natural breakup and drifting apart, or if, you know, something happens but it's not big and dramatic like in the movies or TV. But it's just it's so interesting, because like I really feel like I was like, oh my god, like yeah get out of my head, Rachel.
That's good, because I mean, I think people feel really alone with that, or like, you know, because it seems like sometimes, and I'm sure social media plays a part in this, where everybody else's life is going great, and like all these other friend groups are like great and they're close and like we love each other, and it's like, well, what about like, do they feel these things, or is it just me? Is it a me problem? So I was hoping that this book could be relatable to people. Obviously there's like, the horror is not going to be, hopefully the like more crazy like body horror intense stuff won't be relatable, but the friendship stuff I wanted to really ground that. And I like, anytime I hear that, it just makes me feel so good, because that was my motivation for writing it.
So we have a question from Rachel in the chat. I just wanted to add really quickly, when you talk about social media and friend breakups, another thing that's tough about social media is like when you're like, you can't tell your friend like you're too like, oh well, no, I'm not feeling well, or you know, like, or if your friend says, yeah, no, I'm just gonna stay in, like it doesn't work that way, because if, like, you're tagged in other people's pictures. And you know, like I know like for myself, I had a really close friend, and you know, around the time that I had my kids, we started drifting. But you know, there'd be times she's like, nah, no, I don't have time for anything. And I'm like, really? Because here you are in formal wear, and here you are with drinks and whatever. Rachel Stanford has an amazing question. Hi, Rachel. I'm an inspiring author, but my first drafts are always a mess. How do you organize your plot thoughts, especially since The Return had so many diverse characters and plot twists? Loved the novel.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. So The Return I did outline, and I have an outline and then can kind of go astray, but I outlined all of the characters before I started writing. So I knew like, all right, I knew they're like, don't roll your eyes at me. I knew their zodiac signs. I knew like, you know, what coffee order they would get in the morning. And like, I knew, you know, like I knew all of their I knew their personalities really, really well. So I think knowing your characters inside and out is a good way to kind of keep consistency just across the board. Like I remember writing a line of dialogue, I think it was for May, and just being like, she wouldn't say that, and like delete. Like knowing your characters really, really well at the beginning is really, really helpful. And then like, it's okay if your drafts are a mess. I think, because I've written drafts of novels that like will never see the light of day, and been like, this is a mess, this is a mess, this is a mess. You kind of know in your gut, like if it's something that you want to keep working on, and you like, if you really, really want to crack it, then when you go back to comb through your drafts, you're going to have that confidence and that motivation and that drive to do it. I think for me, where I get in trouble is if I get a down draft and then I'm like I lose that kind of fire for it. So I think like it's okay. Like drafts are supposed to be a mess. That's why they're drafts. You can always work from a draft. I know for Cackle, the first draft, so different than like where it ended up. It's so much better now. But I had that, like I got 30,000 words, I think, into the first draft of Cackle and being like, this isn't working. And I went back and then I started again. So I think, you know, where a lot of writers get tripped up is like, this isn't going the way I thought it was going to go, and this is a problem. It's never, as long as you're feeling it, as long as you're excited about it, it's not a problem. It's just something you got to work out. So I would just say, try not to be discouraged if it's not the way you want it to be on the first draft, like the first go of it. And just to, as long as you feel passionate about it, you can always, you know, keep tweaking, and you don't necessarily need to like know exactly where it's going to go for it to end up where it's supposed to be.
Great advice.
Oh, Rachel actually says, thank you for the advice.
And if you need help, you could always DM me. I like to help people. So
I was like, we have a question from Anonymous. May was very interesting. Have you known a Southerner who tries to hide their accent that way?
I had a roommate after college who had an accent, a Southern accent, that sometimes you'd feel insecure about, but I love the accent. I'm from Jersey, so my accent sometimes can be not as appealing. Sometimes I sound like one of the Sopranos, but yeah, I think, you know, and you meet all sorts of people in life, and I think, you know, I want my fiction to just feel like life, you know, meet all sorts of different people from different places. And I definitely went to a college where I met people from all over. And I think college was the first time I really like got exposed to like different people from, you know, all over the country and different countries and stuff. And, you know, one of my best friends from college is from New Jersey. And then one of my best friends from college is from Puerto Rico. So it's like, it doesn't necessarily like where you're from. I don't think, you know, I'm not only going to be friends with people who I connect with because we grew up in the same place or in the same environment. And I think bonds can be stronger that way when you meet people who like have a totally different background than you, and you can find like certain things that you have in common. I think that makes friendship really special.
We have another question. Oh, this from Paulina. The characters were amazing, and the way they interacted and their journey was very relatable. I actually was still feeling heavy and crying days after reading the book, but in a good way. It just stirred some raw emotions. How did it feel for you to write this book, and did any emotions surprise you in the writing process?
I love this question.
I think I sort of like wrote it in like a feverish state. Very early in the morning. I was working full time at an office, so I would write it between like 4 and 6 in the morning every day. So when you're that tired, I don't think there's a lot of space for emotion. I think a lot of it was kind of just under the surface, where it's just kind of like working things out subconsciously. But I mean, there's 2 friendships that I've lost that have kind of fallen out in my life. And like, I really struggle with those feelings and, you know, not like being able to talk to those people anymore, or knowing it's never going to be what it was. I think there's a lot of sadness in that. But for me, it was kind of like a sneaky, it's one of those, like, it doesn't feel like a all at once. It feels like a little bit random times. So writing the book, I kind of didn't have a lot of room for emotions. It was just getting everything down. And afterwards, I think there are certain things that still like tug on my heartstrings, because my friendships are very, very important to me. And so when you lose it, it just feels like almost like a phantom limb. So I mean, those things aren't resolved. So I think I'm always going to feel those emotions. But now, in terms of like my connection to the return, it feels so long ago for me. It feels like, I mean, maybe because it came out like right at the beginning of COVID and I moved and my life looks so different now. It just feels like I wrote it in a different life and I experienced all those things in a different life. So it's kind of strange. I'd say it's not like a heavy sadness or super emotional, but kind of just like a dull ache that kind of comes and goes.
That is a good question. Good answer. Amber actually asked a question. Did you base the Julie situation on a particular cryptid?
So I think Wendigo was in my head, but I didn't want to like have a particular creature or mythology attached to it, because I thought that would distract from like the points of the book. Like the point I was trying to make was more about, you know, sometimes people you love change and like they're never going to be the same, and you're never going to understand why or understand who they are now, and you're going to question who they used to be. And I think also I wanted it to be a creature that feeds, but not something specific like a vampire or like a specific thing, because again, with the whole mythology, but I wanted it to be something that feeds and that changes, and like things that would be parallel to how you would lose a friend in real life, where they're draining you of energy. They like are transforming into something you don't recognize. So it was kind of based on something, on a vaguely Wendigo, but I didn't want to focus too much on the mythology. That was a choice that I made when I was writing it.
Somebody in the chat mentioned that they have a problem viewing the gallery view, viewing the speaker without the gallery view. So I actually just put us on gallery view. Does anybody, please let me know in the chat if anybody else has this problem, because this is actually the first time I've heard that, and I want to make sure. Can you see Rachel now? Okay. No, interesting. Huh. I wonder what the issue is.
I mean, it still says spotlight. So
let me see. Okay, how about now? Paulina, does you see her now? No. Huh. I'm so sorry. Okay. All right. Well, I apologize for that. I have not seen this problem before. Please, I do hope I did before just her. Okay, yeah, because that's she was spotlighted. So let me. Yeah. I'll do that again. Hold on.
Spotlight back on. Woo-hoo.
Oh, put this. Oh, okay.
All right. All right. Well, I do hope you can see her and still want to participate. There we go. So I liked Elise a lot. She had a lot of
the only one.
Oh, here we go. Wait, oh yeah, no, that's cool. Okay, good. Happy to see that it worked out with the view. Okay. I liked Elise a lot. She had a lot of stuff going on. I know you. I know. What's up?
She's a mess.
I'm trying to be nice here. She had some stuff, and it went to some surprising places, and there was definitely like, like Julie's disappearance, and then like this whole like new Julie that came back that wasn't quite right, had the possibility of exposing a lot that her other friends were not really aware of. That in and of itself is horror.
Yeah, if you tell one of your friends some incriminating information, and then you're like, oh, are they going to tell my other friends? I think that's part of group anxiety, where, in a friend group, like maybe somebody tells you one thing and then you assume everybody else knows, and then you say it and they're like, wait, what? So the group dynamic is a lot. And I do think, the Julie Elise bond was special, and, they've been through some stuff together and probably knew some things about each other that Molly and May didn't. And I think there's like a weird, like extra loyalty there, where they're all very, very loyal in my opinion. But I think Elise is super like loyal to Julie, maybe because Julie knows things about her. And also Julie's a little bit more understanding. Like I know for me and my friend group, it's like, all right, if you want to go to the person who's going to tell you what you want to hear, like, who am I going to go to? No, they're going to give it to me straight. And like, I'm not going to go to her because she's like not going to have any of my bullshit. So I think that's kind of, I tried to put that into the book too, because I think that's true of any friend group or any just group, any person. Like, maybe you want to hear, if you really want the truth, who are you going to call? Or if you just want somebody to validate what you want to hear, who are you going to call? I think everybody has those people and knows, like, do I really want to get called out? No, I'm going to call this person.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. And I liked like Molly and May almost seemed to have like a mirror Julie and Elise thing going. Like the two of them seemed, like they were definitely together. Like everyone was friendly and everyone was together. But Molly and May certainly seemed to have like that special loyalty to each other. But of course, one of them hadn't disappeared for a while and mysteriously come back.
But I mean, I feel like that happens. Like I have of my college friends, so there's a core group of 4 of us, all ladies, and I like reading it. I felt very relatable because like you have my 2 friends that grew up together, went to high school and went to college together, so they're very close. And then you have me and one of my best friends who, like, it's funny because I remember when we met my freshman year, because she's a year older, and actually, yeah, they're all older than me by a year, whatever. And we just got along so well that people are like, oh, you guys never met each other? And I was like, no, I grew up on Long Island and she's from New Jersey. Like, we've never met. We just like, bonding. And it's funny because we're all very close. We have a group chat. And as we've gone out from college and living our lives, like, it still has that dynamic of like, I'm very close with one of them. It changed slightly, like when, 2 out of the 4 of us are married, and then we had kids pretty much the same time, which was like strange coinciding. But it's interesting to see the dynamics of friends and like why people are closer to one than the other. Because now thinking on all my friends groups, like there's in another group of friends that I've grown up with and went to like, elementary, middle school, high school. You're like, which friend do you call? And I was like, yeah, I'm the friend you call when you just want like blunt honesty. And I'm just like gonna be like, yeah, sorry. Like, this is just my opinion. But it's interesting when you see the friend dynamics, and it's interesting. I was reading other reviews of your book, and someone I agree with what they wrote, that it was interesting to see there's barely any men in the book as a horror book. And that's what they pulled from it. And I was like, that's an interesting point of view for a review. Like, did you, like, while writing it, kind of go step?
Were they mad there was no men?
No, they thought it was really interesting. And I was like, I didn't necessarily, because I mean, like, it's not just the women, then they have no one else in their life.
I didn't set out to be like, no men allowed.
Girls' weekends.
I mean, there are like, there's like Tristan, but I mean, it just like, they weren't relevant to this story. Sometimes they're relevant, sometimes they're not. But yeah, I mean, to me, I didn't set out to specifically like, you know, like this is going to be a horror book with just women. It was just, this is the story I want to tell, and this is how I'm going to tell it. Yeah. So.
They did love your book, by the way.
Huh?
They did love your book, the review I was reading. I like what they put it, Girls' Weekend Horror. We have another question. This from Amber again. When did you begin reading horror or watching like anything scary?
So I like I'm afraid of everything. So I don't think I realized that I really loved horror until I was in college. So I would like, before then it was like, I was very intrigued by it, but like I would watch a horror movie and it would traumatize me for like months and I wouldn't sleep. But when I got to college, my roommate and now best friend, who I've been friends with for 12 years, she really, really loves horror, and she would not force us, but it was very much encouraged to watch horror movies. So like we had one weekend where we watched the Kubrick Shining and then the made for TV Shining. She's like a student of the genre. And I remember she had me over and we watched The Orphanage. And it was so terrifying that I had a panic attack, stopped watching at a certain point. And then I like remember going upstairs and like having the panic attack and then being like, I need to know what happens. I need to know what happens. And so the next day I was like, we have to finish watching it. She was like, okay. So I think that was when I was like, oh, like you actually like love this. You like, yes, it terrifies you, but like this genre is so compelling and there's so much room for stories. And so that's kind of when I realized. And then that same year, there was I was in a screenwriting club in college, and there was a feature screenplay contest, and it was themed horror. So I wrote a horror screenplay and I won the contest. And I was like, maybe this is where I'm supposed to be.
What was it about?
It was about like a mother and a young son who move into this town, and then kids start going missing. The opening scene was really cool, but I don't know if I should share it because maybe I'll.
Yeah, don't
down the line.
I was just super amused because at first I thought you were going to say, I don't remember what it's about.
It's a little vague. I'm like, I've noticed that, I don't know if it's like pandemic brain or whatever, but like this past, or felt like now I'm just like just rocketing into my 30s where I just can't remember anything anymore. It used to be a steel trap. And lately, it's just like, I have no idea.
Summertime, just wait till you're in your 40s and you're like, where did I put my phone again for the 10th time? Oh, I'm holding it? What?
It's downhill fast.
It just goes away. We have a question.
We do. Before you go into the question, Jessica, Amber does says, Kubrick is iconic, but TV is good in a different way.
Yes. The little boy in the TV one is a little obnoxious.
Yeah. But I
My
do
friend
like
and I
Steven
imitate
Weber.
him all the time. But it's close, it's way closer to the book than Kubrick's is more of an interpretation, and then the TV version.
Because I've seen both. I feel like I should have done what you were what you did / were forced to do of like back to back. Because I like doing stuff like that, but
Well,
I was like,
October's right around the corner.
it is. We're more than halfway to Halloween.
So it's just so weird because like yeah, the TV one wasn't bad. I mean, but it's kind of like the Kubrick one. I know a lot of people, and it's true. It's not 100% faithful to the book, but it's one of those things that's just sort of an entity in and of itself, and like it's so memeable, and people don't like think of it without realizing what the source material was, and
the images are so iconic.
Yeah,
like that's I think the tricycle shot and the the sisters and like those things are so, they just stick in your head. And the TV version, I can't quite conjure the images. I just remember the Wendy character is truer to the book, and the ending I remember is true to the book. And I love Steven Weber because I remember when I was young, we would watch like Wings when I was so. And I think part of The Shining is the Jack character in the book and in the TV version, it's a slow unraveling, and in the Kubrick version, it's Jack Nicholson. You're like, oh, this guy, so like right off the bat.
That's the thing about Jack Nicholson. And like my husband and I, when we first got together, used to argue about who the best Joker is. And I'm like, listen, like, first of all, for me, it's Mark Hamill all the way, because he was the voice of the Joker in the Batman cartoon. And I got legitimately emotional when I found that out, being a Star Wars person. But like for me, Jack Nicholson is great, and he's Jack Nicholson. But there was not a moment when I was watching the Burton Batman that I was unaware that that was Jack Nicholson as the Joker. He was just like in the Series of Unfortunate Events movie. There was not a moment that I was not like, oh no, that's just Jim Carrey doing a Count Olaf thing. Neil Patrick Harris nailed it. Jim Carrey didn't not nail it, but there's not a moment he wasn't Jim Carrey. I think like with Steven Weber, like he was Jack, but you can't beat Jack Nicholson at being
anybody but Jack Nicholson. Yeah.
Do you want to take the question, Stacy? Because our poor anonymous attendee is like, why are you talking about Jack Nicholson? I have a question.
Because Jack Nicholson. Anonymous asked, when does Cackle come out, and can you talk about it at all?
Yeah, why not? Let's get into it. It comes out on October 5th. And it's a bit funnier than The Return. It's funny because I remember one of my earliest memories is my mother coaxing me to get on the Haunted Mansion by being like, it's more funny than scary. And like, as like the werewolf howls were coming out, she was lying, but I am not. I don't think. I think Cackle's a bit more of a like, it's like a dark comedy. There are some scary moments, but did I say it came out October 5th? Yeah, October 5th. And it's about Annie, who just turned 30, and she got dumped by her longtime boyfriend. And she can no longer afford to stay in New York City. So she moves to like a tiny little town upstate that's super cute. And she's going through it. She's really upset about her breakup and very self-conscious about being single and 30, and she's a bit of a sad sack. And then she meets Sophie, who is a beautiful local woman who's really self-possessed, and she befriends Annie, and Annie is kind of starstruck by this like beautiful stranger, and they form a friendship, and things kind of get strange from there.
I'm excited for it. And I have to say, just looking at your two covers side by side, like I think the teacup cackle really goes well with the Haunted Mansion decor, which reminds me of the cover of The Return because some of the coloring of the Haunted Mansion. And I feel like your mom could be friends with my mom because when I was younger, the Haunted Mansion scared me, especially with like the fake lightning. Like I just remember we were there on a trip with family friends and they're like, yeah, let's go. And I was like, no, it's scary. Because like, as much as I love haunted horror stuff like that, I can't go to a haunted house attraction.
Yeah, well, most haunted house attractions are really freaky because they're not like Disney quality is a little bit different because like it's really high quality.
Yes.
So like even though like I still get like I remember when I did finally go on as an adult, we got stuck in the graveyard like right in front of like the things that pop up and down, and I was like, I can't do it. But there's something different where it's like Disney and every detail is perfect, and like then going on like in a random haunted house where like the paint's chipping off and all, because like that's scary in and of itself. So
yeah,
I mean carnivals and like are scary. They
in general. In general. I will say Haunted Mansion, I have been on the ride. I've had my eyes open. If you live on Long Island and have been to Adventureland, just know I've never opened my eyes on that ride. I just haunted ride to this day. I'm like, oh, we got it. Okay, tell me when I'm outside. If we're not outside, I'm gonna murder you.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a question from Patricia.
We have numerous questions.
Oh, go for it. Amber wants to know why upstate New York is so creepy.
Because it is.
I don't know either. I mean, for me, like I lived in Brooklyn for so many years, I was just like, what's up there? And now I live in kind of in Western New York, but I went to Asylum in like the middle of nowhere and at night, and I'll tell you, like it's just nothing. Like in the dark, nothing as far as you can see. And I was like, yeah, this is where I write because it's creepy.
It is. I was like, it's 2021. So in 2015, I went to a conference and I got to bring my husband. And I just remember I'm attending the conference, doing my professional thing, libraries. And he's like, yeah, I'm just going to like hike around Lake Placid. I'm like, you don't hike, but whatever. And he just comes back after like an hour or so. We met up for dinner and he's like, it felt like something was watching me. I did not like it. And I was like, welcome to the outdoors. But I do like Patricia's question.
Yes.
This is for you, Rachel. Yeah, in The Return, the hotel is like an additional character in the story. In Cackle, will the location play a similar role?
A little bit. I'd say a little bit less because I think in Cackle I didn't want the setting to be too like this isn't a fantasy book, like this is a contemporary story that I wanted to feel believable. I wanted to feel like it could happen, so I didn't want to have it be too outlandish or colorful. Like the red honey is ridiculous. So even though like the hotel itself is grounded in reality, it feels kind of otherworldly. And I wanted the town Rowan to feel a little bit like, Stars Hollow in Gilmore Girls, where it feels like this place would never exist, but like but everything about it is believable. And then Sophie does have a big creepy house, so there is some influence of setting, but it's not quite as profound as in The Return, because I think The Return needed that extra like the hot pink, like it needed that poof against the story. And I think Cackle, the story itself, didn't really warrant quite as outlandish of a setting.
And yet I would totally stay at the hotel from The Return. Like that would be a thing that I'd be like, oh, and there's this hotel and we're staying there.
Yeah, the Jungle Room.
I've always wanted to go to one of those like hotel motels. So I think BuzzFeed, like not that long ago, did like a list of all these themed hotels, and I sent it to my friend group. I'm like, road trip. They're like,
in the
no.
Post-pandemic world, it would be fun. But when it first came out, I was like, no one's taking any girls trip anytime soon.
Ooh. Amber asked, was there something wrong with Patsy and The Return, or were the girls just being mean girls?
They were really mean. I felt bad about that. But I do feel like when you get into like a group setting, like there is an inherent like human thing to like gang up on somebody. And I do think like also like being in your 20s, seeing older women and being like, I don't like feeling almost like a like fear, like, is this how I want my life to go? Are they happy? Like this kind of anxiety for me, I know I was experiencing that, like just kind of like looking at women who are older than me and their trajectories and feeling some kind of anxiety about where I am and who I will be. But there was nothing wrong with her. She's perfectly lovely and I feel bad about it. Yeah, poor Patsy. They were all kind of dicks about Patsy.
She really loved that hotel.
Yeah.
And I just put in the chat if anyone was interested in that BuzzFeed list, if you want to check out some of those hotels.
Yes, that was, thank you, Jessica.
You can put it in there. It's funny when we were talking about haunted. This is the second Summer Scares program where we have talked about haunted houses. The first one was with Josh Mallerman, and he told everybody how he freaks out in haunted houses. I believe is that correct, Stacy?
Yeah, I think so. I get I don't like going through them, and one of my friends that I watch scary movies with or like scary video games. He's like, oh my God, we should totally do something like a real haunted house. And I was like, maybe we'll see. Cause like there's haunted places on Long Island. And he's like, if we ever go to like a really creepy house or something, or like a prison, like Eastern State Penitentiary, he's like, I would lock you in a basement. And I'm like, you're not my friend. You're not my friend at all if you would do that to me. But like I said before, I would find a way out and just dead. I would not do well. And in the attractions where it's people, I get violent.
Yeah.
So I don't do it. I'm protecting the other people.
Not the people when people would jump out. I don't like that. Even in a movie, if I know a jump scare is coming.
But really see, in a movie, I could handle it. Movie or TV, I'm just like, I'll flinch. I did that because I watched A Quiet Place, and like, spoiler alert, there's creatures. But I would be like, oh, like, I mean, even in a thriller that could happen with a jump scare. I've had my dad, I forgot the movie. It's with Angelina Jolie and Ethan Hawke, and like she's investigating a serial killer situation. And there's a scene in the movie I just remember seeing with my parents, and my dad was sitting with like his legs crossed, and the leg that was on top was facing me, and he jumped in the movie and kicked me.
I would do that. Yeah.
So I usually am just like, oh. But yeah, no, haunted houses I can't do. I might like, drive by one. I'll just be like, I'll see it. Be like,
hi, ghosts. Yeah, and then
like,
just
cool.
Hope you're doing well. Goodbye.
But so creepy. But horror stuff is interesting because I mean we talked about before we really started the thing about arachnophobia. I have seen that movie. I suffer from that. There's no reason why I should. They've never done anything to me. They just terrify me. To quote a guy in my French class, they're ugly. That's why I don't like them. They're just, I can't. Cackle will change how you feel. I'm very excited to read it. to have that change my. Is there like tarantulas in it? Like those spiders? Okay. I was like, I gotta prep myself for this.
I promise you, you'll see it differently. I like got a little temporary. It's not real.
It's temporary.
So my
Okay.
mom's
I was like, you are dedicated to
I was gonna be like, yeah.
ink box. They have really cool temporary tattoos. So I was like, I'm gonna wear it for my I have 2 events. But then I like put it in such a way where I was like, I'm gonna put it here, and it's like somewhere only I can see it. And I was like, good for me. But I did, and then I have like a little spider ring.
Oh, that's cute.
I'm really committed to the theme.
Spiders
I appreciate that.
Cool, though. Like they make beautiful art, and I don't know.
The webs are cool.
Webs are cool, but I felt very different about them as a kid. Amber wants to know, did you plan as much with Cackle as with The Return?
No, I went into Cackle a little bit like, because, all right, I did it once. Can I do it again? So I remember they asked me for an outline for your second book, and I remember writing an outline. And it just I was like, this is not it. And then so I threw that one over my shoulder and I started writing. I got 30,000 words into it and I was like, this isn't working. And I started over. And then my poor editor had a lot of work to do on it because I did not plan as much. There aren't as many characters, like there's 2 main characters as opposed to 4. And I feel very close to, I don't want to say that I am Annie because I don't know, people haven't read it yet, and if they don't like her, I don't want them to be like, but a lot of my insecurities and anxieties and being self-conscious, that is very much a part of Annie. So whereas I felt like there was parts of me in all the characters in The Return, I really felt like Annie is my essence is Annie. And also when you have 4 characters, I wanted them all to feel different because I didn't want anybody to be confused with anybody else. I wanted them to all feel believable but distinct. And in The Return and in Cackle, there's only 2. So it was easier, I think, to manage. I didn't have to I knew who they were and I didn't have to worry so much about the specifics of well, what if they confuse this, Molly and May both have M names. Is that okay? I didn't have to worry about that as much in Cackle. And yeah, I kind of went off the rails when planning Cackle. But I mean, I'm really happy with how it turned out and how I got to this point. But I definitely was bumbling through it a little bit. I'm happy with where I ended up and I'm really, really proud of it. But I did not plan as much, and I put in the work afterwards because of that.
We have about 10 minutes left. I just put in the chat a list of our upcoming programs. We do have a few more Summer Scares programs coming up, including, I know we have excuse me, at least one aspiring writer in the event. I don't know.
As an attendee?
Yes, attendee. Yes, there we go. We are hosting a writing workshop on July 8th, which is how to write a compelling villain, which is supposed to be going with this whole theme. And the woman who runs those programs is super fun. So
I love her.
It's in celebration of NaNoWriMo. However, you do not have to be doing NaNoWriMo in order to do it. So if you click on the link, or you can email, I'm going to put the email in if you would like to sign up for the for that. We're also having 90s trivia next week.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Hey, you can come to that too. We would love to have
fun. Yeah.
Great questions.
Let's see. So you can email there. Those are two of our only programs, I think, that require. Oh no, wait. There's one
That
more.
require registration. I can't talk today.
No, neither can I. We also we're having P. Jelly Clark who wrote
Ring shout.
which is fabulous. But you do have to register for that one as per the policy of his publishing company. And if you go onto the website, you will be able to do so. I know I also mentioned if you're interested in getting emails about our upcoming events, you can email me and we will get you on that list. But Rachel, you worked in TV before you became a writer?
Yes. I worked as a production assistant. I went to school for screenwriting, and then I worked on the Newlywed Game. I worked on like game show pilots. Then I worked for a TV lighting company. Then I got a job in publishing. I worked in contracts. And then I worked at JP Morgan Chase as an assistant. As one does. It was just a totally normal trajectory. I bounced around a lot. And then, yeah. So any aspiring writers, just keep on keeping on.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
You started in screenwriting. How was do you find your process like very, very different? As somebody who took screenwriting classes myself and like someone who has tried writing but can never finish a story or a screenplay, I always found just the difference pretty jarring.
It's very, very different. You can't, like, for me, I couldn't just switch back and forth. It took me years after graduating to like write decent prose, because I just wasn't like, I wasn't thinking about like how to like construct a beautiful sentence. I was just like, they go here, they say this. But I will say I'm pretty, like, my dialogue, like I feel pretty confident in my dialogue, I think because I come from that screenwriting background. I know in The Return it's a lot of dialogue. So I'd say that's the influence there.
Let's see.
We do have a question from Anonymous.
Take it.
If you're the same Anonymous, great questions. If not, love all your questions, everyone that wants to be anonymous. They ask, do you have anything else you're working on now?
Yes, I do. I can't say anything yet, but keep an eye on my socials. Hopefully soon I can share what's coming next from me. And then I do have something short coming out before Cackle. So if you like what I write, there's more content from me. Something will be coming out in July, early July. So I'm excited to share that, and then share what's coming after Cackle as well.
Yay. It was their first question, and they said, is it scary?
Yeah, so I would say the short thing coming out in July is more speculative. If you've read my short fiction, I have my 2 short stories up on my website. It's more along that line where there's some horror elements, but I wouldn't say it's as like, like the hot sauce rating. I feel like there's that for scary too. I think, The Return for me is scary. My short stuff and Cackle is probably like spicy, but not hot. And then the next thing that I have coming out is Ghost Pepper. So.
Ooh, that sounds great. That sounds really, really good. Yeah, when you were talking about the Haunted Mansion before, I took my almost 4-year-old son and they're twins and his brother into the Haunted Mansion. We took them for Disney right before they turned 4. And I was afraid of the Haunted Mansion when I was a kid, but I was just like, no, my kids are fearless. It'll be fine. And so we got a fast pass for it and we went in. And I still feel terrible because one of my sons was so afraid and he came out and he was crying. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Well, he'll grow up to write horror just like me.
The other one was like, that was great. Can we go again? And then like went
probably
home.
like, can we live here?
He went home and like he and his brother would play games, or he would play games with his brother. And I guess like since like they weren't actually in the ride, his brother was more open to it. But like they would try to emulate it. So like they'd be like, okay, and now I turn off the light and now somebody screams and the walls are stretching out.
Lucky you. You got the ride home with you.
Oh my gosh, so much. But yeah, so like I was also afraid of everything as a child, and I also got into horror as a college person, but that was because I studied film theory, and my film theory professor was like, horror is the only way to study film theory, so this is what we're doing. But I had the pleasure of being at StokerCon, virtual StokerCon recently, which was super fun. There is a trend though of like everybody there was like, no, I never read horror as a kid. I thought it was really scary. Why do you think that so many fraidy cats become horror aficionados? And like audience, you can put your speculations in there too, because I really want to know.
It's a good question.
Fear is such a powerful emotion that if you feel it, I think like to feel like profound fear, I think you feel compelled to examine that fear. So the people who get afraid more easily, I think, are more intrigued by like, what is this? How do I explore it? And I think horror is a really useful, I mean, it's an art and it's enjoyable, but I think it's also really useful to examine our fear and to kind of give us a space to kind of like a safe space to be afraid, because it's fiction and you can kind of explore your emotions and your fear through this fictional world and kind of question and examine and analyze it through there. And I think the more I am into horror, the less I'm afraid in terms of like irrational stuff. Just because I think it's a great way to get to know yourself and to know your fear, because it's really powerful and it can be really overwhelming. So yeah, I think that's why people who tend to be afraid gravitate towards horror. That's, at least for me, that's what it is. But I know it's different for everybody.
I know I've been saying since the pandemic, because I've been reading so much horror, that it feels safer. And it, especially like from April to last August, and I'm not talking about like this, like, I mean, 2020. And actually, no, I'm just gonna just like all the way through, like it felt so much safer than whatever was going on outside and whatever was going on in the news. And it was a contained story and it got your emotions going, but then it had an ending.
And also, I feel like, did you read Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay?
I have not, but I'm dying to.
So that's a pandemic book. And I remember I read that and I watched Train to Busan, which is like a zombie like outbreak movie. And I remember being like, well, it's not that bad. Like, and then like it kind of offered this like weird like catharsis through like everything's really hard. We can't see our families, like, but like, you know, like sometimes it helps to have that, like, it's not like perspective per se because it's wild fiction, but just to like in the moments of despair to be like, there are worse fates than like, you know, whatever. I mean, a lot of people really, really suffered through the pandemic. But for the people who like me who are kind of just home and, you know, separated from family. And, you know, I'm not a healthcare worker. Like I wasn't struggling on the day to day to kind of have that, like, if I was ever like self-pitying, to be like, there are worse fates, like you're doing okay.
This was amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much to Rachel Harrison, to all of our guests.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
I'm
This was so fun.
Because now I'm off the clock in like 2 seconds and I can start to partake.
Mine's pretty much
I was like, I finished my seltzer.
Come to our other Summer Scares events. Come to our non-Summer Scares events.
Come to all our events. Be our best friends.
Yes.
Chat with us.
Chat with us. Things with us. We're fun. And
you're welcome, Paulina.
You're so welcome, Paulina. And of course, shout out to Becky Spratford, who birthed this whole Summer Scares. And enjoy the rest.
If you haven't read the book, you can get the book.
Oh,
Library Hat Fit.
If you have any other questions for me or whatever, you can feel free to DM me on Twitter.
And
find me there.
Check it out at your local library or at your local bookshop, at your local creepy upstate, wherever it is.
October 5th.
There you go.
Interested in everyone.
In a spooky season Halloween read, you can pre-order.
And I'm just going to throw this out there. If you would like to chat on Turn the Page, the library's podcast about Cackle.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Sign me up.
That's not where I thought you were going with it. I was like, oh, we're just inviting random people, like attendees, if they want to do an episode with us.
Well, you know, I mean, we do have one.
Everybody's coming. We're going to have a
party. Turn the Page party. No, we'd love to have you on an episode.
Live episodes where attendees can have their questions read, which eventually gets uploaded. So, yes.
You can see the orange on my face. Sorry, the sun is just...
Happens in summer.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye.
Hi, everybody.